For 20 years, the house breathed quietly, no screams, no neighbors suspicious, just a normal home hiding something so cruel it almost feels impossible. One fire changed everything. One desperate choice exposed a secret so dark it rewrote the meaning of survival. Stay with this story, because what happened inside that room will stay with you long after the screen goes black. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon, because the truth doesn't knock twice, and the next true crime story is coming sooner than you think. The street looked like every other street in Connecticut. Neatly trimmed lawns, kids' bikes leaning against fences, porch lights clicking on right before sunset. Nothing about it warned you that one house was different. Inside that house lived Kimberly Sullivan. She blended in perfectly, friendly enough, quiet, the kind of woman you passed at the grocery store without ever remembering her face, and somewhere inside that same house was her stepson. A boy who slowly disappeared without anyone noticing. It started years earlier, back when he was just a kid. A child who still believed adults were safe, who thought homes were places you could rest. At first, it didn't feel like a prison. It felt like rules, strict ones, doors closed, windows locked, boundaries explained as discipline. Kimberly controlled everything: food, light, time, silence. She said it was for his own good. She said the world was dangerous, that he couldn't be trusted out there. The room became smaller without ever shrinking. Each year it felt tighter, darker, heavier. Days blurred into nights, nights into weeks, weeks into years. No school, no friends, no birthdays that mattered. Just the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Just the click of a lock reminding him who had power. The outside world moved on without him. Technology changed. Presidents came and went. Entire eras passed by. Inside that room, time froze. Neighbors noticed nothing strange. They assumed he moved away, or that he was difficult, or that it wasn't their business. Kimberly played her role well. Concerned stepmother, responsible adult, victim of a troubled child narrative she planted long before anyone asked questions. And the boy learned something important early on. Silence keeps you alive. He survived on scraps of routine, counting steps, memorizing cracks in the ceiling, measuring time by seasons he could barely see. His body aged. His mind stayed trapped somewhere between hope and fear. Every locked door trained him. Every withheld meal broke him down and rebuilt him quieter. This wasn't rage-fueled abuse. It was control, cold, calculated, methodical. 20 years is a long time to disappear. Long enough for the world to forget your name. Until the night everything burned. The fire call came in fast. Smoke pouring from a house no one had ever worried about. Firefighters expected an accident. Maybe an appliance, maybe a careless mistake. What they found stopped them cold. A man stumbled out of the smoke coughing. Not a homeowner, not a guest. A man who looked like he had stepped out of another time. His body told a story before he ever did. Malnourished, weak, movements unsure, like someone who hadn't walked freely in years. He didn't run, he didn't scream, he just stood there, shaking, like he wasn't sure escape was real. When police arrived, the questions came quickly. Who was he? Why hadn't anyone seen him before? That's when the truth began to crack through the ash. He had been trapped, locked inside a bedroom for 20 years. Not hidden in a basement, not chained underground, right there, above ground, inside a normal house. The fire wasn't an accident. It was a last move. A final choice made by someone who had no other exits left. As investigators stepped inside the burned home, they found the room, the locks, the barriers, the signs of long-term captivity hiding in plain sight, and standing outside, watching it all unravel, was Kimberly Sullivan. Still calm, still composed, but the story she told didn't quite fit, because houses don't keep secrets for 20 years unless someone works very hard to protect them, and this was only the beginning. The smell of smoke still clung to the air when investigators stepped deeper into the house. What looked like fire damage at first glance slowly revealed something far worse. This wasn't just a bedroom. It was a controlled environment. The door had multiple locks installed at different heights, not the kind you forget about, the kind you add over time. The windows were sealed shut, covered, blocked. Reinforced, there were no personal items scattered around, no posters, no photos, no signs of a life being lived, just a mattress on the floor, thin, worn down to almost nothing. Investigators noticed the walls first. Scratches, faint marks, lines carved over years, not days. Someone had been counting time in here, or at least trying to. Food containers told another story, small portions, inconsistent, meant to sustain, not nourish. This wasn't neglect, this was intentional deprivation. Outside, Kimberly Sullivan stayed close to law enforcement. Her posture was calm, her face steady. She framed herself as overwhelmed, a caretaker pushed too far. She described her stepson as unstable, dangerous, someone who needed to be kept under control. But the evidence didn't support fear. It supported dominance. Medical responders examined the man who escaped the fire. His muscles had wasted away. His skin showed long-term confinement. Sunlight hurt his eyes. Simple movements exhausted him. He didn't behave like someone who had planned arson for revenge. He behaved like someone who had gambled everything on one last chance. Investigators began rebuilding the timeline, piece by piece. School records showed he vanished quietly. No follow-ups, no missing persons report. Medical records stopped abruptly. No doctors, no checkups. Neighbors remembered seeing him once, years ago, then nothing. Every system that should have protected him failed at the same time, and Kimberly stood at the center of that silence. Detectives noticed inconsistencies in her statements. Small ones at first, dates that didn't line up, details that shifted when repeated. She described him as violent, yet there were no police reports. She said she feared for her life. Yet she slept freely while he remained locked away. Power imbalance became impossible to ignore. The house itself began to speak. Security modifications installed from the inside. Locks placed where only someone with authority would choose them. Measures designed to restrict, not protect. Then came the digital evidence. Old devices. Internet searches. Searches about confinement. About legal guardianship loopholes. About how long someone could be kept isolated without detection. That was the moment investigators stopped treating this as neglect. This was captivity. The survivor began slowly opening up under medical supervision, not with words at first, with reactions. He flinched at footsteps, panicked when doors closed. He ate like someone afraid food would disappear, like someone trained to survive scarcity. When he finally shared fragments, they were devastating. Years blurred together, punishments for imagined infractions, silence used as a weapon, isolation framed as protection. He learned that obedience meant survival, that resistance meant suffering. The fire changed everything, not because it was violent, because it was decisive. He had realized something terrifying. No one was coming. There would be no rescue, no miracle, so he made one choice left to him. Investigators returned to Kimberly with new pressure. This time, the calm cracked, her tone hardened, her explanations grew defensive. She claimed she was overwhelmed, that she did her best. But best doesn't install multiple locks. Best doesn't erase a human life for 2 decades. Forensic specialists confirmed the room showed long-term habitation. Years, not weeks, dust patterns, wear marks, evidence stacked higher than excuses. Then came the turning point. Investigators discovered earlier reports, concerns raised long ago that were dismissed. Teachers who noticed signs, neighbors who felt something was off but never pushed, a system that looked away, again and again. The case stopped being just about Kimberly Sullivan. It became about how easy it was to disappear someone without moving them at all. Media attention exploded. Headlines called it a house of horrors. But inside the investigation, the focus stayed narrow. Proof, accountability, truth. Kimberly's legal team attempted damage control, mental health narratives, stress, isolation, but the physical evidence didn't care about narratives. Neither did the survivor's body. When charges were prepared, the weight of 20 years pressed down on everyone involved. This wasn't a momentary crime. It was a lifetime stolen one day at a time. As investigators prepared to formally arrest Kimberly, something became clear. This wasn't just about locking a door. It was about rewriting reality for someone until they forgot freedom existed. And now that reality was collapsing, because the man she tried to erase had survived, and his survival was about to destroy the story she'd built for 2 decades. The arrest didn't happen quietly. It never does when the truth weighs this heavy. Kimberly Sullivan stood in the same driveway she had walked for years, pretending everything inside her house was normal. Now cameras lined the street. Neighbors watched from behind curtains they wished they had opened sooner. She didn't look defeated. She looked offended. Handcuffs closed around her wrists, and for the first time in 20 years, she wasn't the one controlling the locks. Inside the hospital, the survivor learned the word free in a way that felt unreal. Freedom wasn't loud. It didn't explode with happiness. It arrived slowly, like light creeping into a room your eyes aren't ready for. Doctors explained things he had never known, that what happened wasn't discipline, that it wasn't protection, that it wasn't his fault. Those words hit harder than any lock ever had. Investigators kept digging because 20 years of silence doesn't exist without structure. They uncovered schedules, rules, patterns. Kimberly hadn't just trapped him physically. She trapped him psychologically. She controlled information, told him the world outside had rejected him, told him authorities were dangerous, that if he ever spoke, he would be punished or taken somewhere worse. Fear became the fence. The room was just reinforcement. In court filings, prosecutors laid out the timeline in brutal detail, year by year, decision by decision. Each choice she made narrowed his life further. Each excuse stripped away another piece of his future. The defense tried to soften the story: mental health struggles, caregiver stress. But the jury didn't see stress. They saw planning. They saw effort. They saw intent. Photos of the room were entered into evidence: the mattress, the locks, the reinforced windows. The room looked smaller on screen than it ever could in real life. Because no photo can capture what triggering silence feels like, the survivor testified through recorded statements, not dramatic, not angry, flat, controlled, honest. He described learning how to disappear inside himself, how to stop hoping because hope hurt too much. He talked about the fire, not as revenge, as surrender. He believed he would die either way, but at least this way, someone might finally see him. That realization shifted the entire room. Kimberly avoided looking at the screen, avoided looking at the evidence. For the first time, her story didn't matter. Only the truth did. The verdict came back guilty. No celebration followed, no cheering. Just a deep, collective exhale. Sentencing focused on impact, not just on years lost, but on moments erased. First jobs never worked. Friendships never formed. Love never learned. The judge spoke directly to Kimberly. Not with rage, with clarity. Control isn't care. Isolation isn't protection. Silence isn't consent. The sentence ensured she would never again control another life. The door closed on her world permanently. For the survivor, justice didn't feel like closure. It felt like the beginning of grief. Grief for the childhood he never had. Grief for the person he could have been. Therapy became its own journey. Learning how to make choices, learning how to speak up, learning how to trust. Simple things felt overwhelming: crossing streets, ordering food, sitting in public spaces, but each step forward mattered. People reached out. Strangers wrote letters, not out of pity, out of respect. He wasn't defined by what was done to him. He was defined by surviving it. The house was eventually torn down, not renovated, not repurposed, erased. Some structures are too poisoned to keep standing. The neighborhood changed after that. People looked closer, asked questions, checked in. The story left a scar on the community. But scars remind you where healing started. Years later, the survivor walked freely under open sky. No locks, no timers, just breathe. The fire that once felt like destruction became something else entirely. A signal, a flare fired into the dark saying someone was still alive inside. Kimberly Sullivan tried to bury a life quietly, but silence couldn't hold forever, because no matter how long a door stays locked, truth always finds a way out.